We also want to bring in Christopher Harmer, who's a senior naval analyst with the Middle East Security Project for the Institute for Study of War. And I wanted to ask you the same question. What exactly is the capability of these missiles? We heard there from our previous guest. What specifically would be the effect of those missiles if there were chemical weapons stored at an airfield?
Yes, so everything that Mikey K said there was correct. One thing I would add is very, very difficult to attack and destroy chemical weapons. It is a doable mission, but it's a very difficult mission, and it's a multi-stage mission. What we mean by that is you have to have a first wave attack to crack open the chemical warheads. You have to have a second wave attack to incinerate the warheads. If you don't incinerate the chemical weapons within, you've really just caused a much bigger problem by exposing these chemical weapons to the atmosphere and killing any innocent civilians in the area. So I don't believe that the purpose of this strike was to attack chemical weapons. I think the purpose of this strike was a punitive retaliation for the use of chemical weapons and hopefully a deterrent for the future use of chemical weapons. One thing I would say, very remarkable how quickly this strike came together. That's one of the advantages of a Tomahawk cruise missile. It literally takes about 5 minutes to program and fire, whereas with manned missions, I'm a retired naval aviator, it can take a long time to get the aviator spun up. They got to get briefed, the aircraft got to get pre-flighted, loaded, etc. This really is sort of push button warfare. And I don't want to minimize the fact that we're talking about a lot of human beings being killed tonight, but it really is a unique capability to be able to program, target, and launch a missile on very short notice like this.
Christopher, my question tonight, though, is do you believe that this attack was a warning shot, or do you believe that this tips the balance of power in Syria with this conflict?
I don't think it tips the balance of the power based on what we've seen so far. It's an excellent question because you've got a lot of competing interests there. You've got the Syrian Arab regime, or the Syrian Assad regime, which is really on life support from both Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah. Without any one of those three external agents supporting the Assad regime, it's likely or possible that the Assad regime would fall. So it remains to be seen how Iran and Russia react to this. One of your previous guests said this may be a green light for Iran to start attacking Americans operating in Syria. That's certainly the game plan they followed in Iraq from the middle of 2003 on, when Iranian-sponsored attacks against U.S. soldiers in southern and central Iraq cost literally hundreds of lives. So it remains to be seen how both Russia and Iran react to this. I'm also very interested to see how the U.S. Navy managed the problem with the Russian surface-to-air missiles in and around Latakia and Tartus. I wonder if the U.S. Navy simply avoided those areas altogether or had some active suppression of enemy air defenses. That's something we just won't know yet for several days.
Mikey, I have a question for you. I'm wondering about one of the concerns about launching airstrikes against military targets in Syria has always been that many of these airstrip installations are centered around populated areas where there are civilians. Obviously, the Pentagon wants to minimize any sort of casualties among civilians. So when they are picking these targets, why do you think this particular airfield was chosen today, if you had to guess? Mikey, are you still there? Do we still have Mikey K with us with the Royal Air Force? Christopher, if you wouldn't mind weighing in on that question.
Yeah, so no, I understand the question. I believe that this was the airbase from which the chemical weapon attack was launched. I can't say that with certainty, but it appears the geography looks right, the timing looks right, the spacing looks right. In terms of avoiding civilian damage, avoiding what we euphemistically call collateral damage, and again, keep in mind we're talking about actual human beings here. There is no more accurate weapon on Earth than Tomahawk cruise missile. It has a range of 1,000 miles and has an accuracy within 1 meter. We've been using these things for almost 30 years, and over the last 10 years, we've got about a 99% reliability rate on this. That means 99% of the time, the missile comes off the rail, it goes where it's supposed to, it hits where it's supposed to within 1 meter. So I think we're relatively safe from the prospect of significant collateral damage. And I think what's happening here is twofold. Number one, punitive action, punishing the Assad regime for using this airbase to launch chemical weapons attacks, and also cratering the runway, making it impossible for the Syrian Air Force to use it for the foreseeable future. Now, U.S. military personnel, we've got the logistics capability to repair runways very quickly. I don't think the Syrians have that depth of manpower or engineering expertise after 6 years of civil war. So I expect that this airbase will be out of commission for some time.
All right. We want to thank you, Christopher Harmer, for your perspective on this still developing story. Thanks very much for your insight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.